All right, what's up, engineers? Welcome back to your Onshape demos. In demo 11 today, we're going to be looking at a few more feature tools. So remember, feature tools are the tools that allow us to edit and create our 3D objects. So the first one we're going to look at is the shell tool. That looks like kind of a hollowed out box, and that's exactly what this tool allows us to do. It allows us to quickly hollow out any objects. The second tool we're going to look at is the fillet tool. And if that sounds familiar, it should, because we've already looked at the fillet tool when we were in the sketch toolbar. Very similar to what the fillet tool in the sketch toolbar does, the fillet tool in the feature toolbar allows us to smooth sharp edges of our features. So it'll smooth sharp edges of 3D objects. And then the last tool that we're going to look at is the rib tool. The rib tool allows us to quickly add supports or dividers to features. And you're going to see that's going to be important today because we're going to be creating some bookshelves for both our demo and for our homework assignment. So let's just take a look first at the blueprint for demo 11. So this is what we're going to be creating. If you notice, we have some kind of smoothed off edges, so we definitely have to use the fillet tool. You can see that we have these dividers in between, so that's going to be where we're having to use the rib. And then the last thing is the actual shell itself, and you can see that obviously there's a outside kind of box. That's actually what we're going to start with. So let's go ahead and get into Onshape so that we can begin. We'll start by creating a new document.
The name of this document should be your class name underscore demo 11 underscore your last name.
After we've created that object, the first thing that we need to do is we actually need to change the workspace units. If you look on this diagram, on this blueprint, all of our units are in inches. And if you set up your Onshape account correctly, yours should be in millimeters. So we need to change these workspace units from millimeters to inches, and then we can confirm. Okay, so now our workspace unit is in millimeters. And then the last thing that I want to do, and I'm going to do this on the demo, you do not need to do this for the demo, but you do need to do this for the homework. I guess you don't need to, but it'll make it a lot easier, is I want to add in my blueprint so that I can quickly reference it without having to go pull up another picture and then go back. So to add in my blueprint, I'll just do insert new element, import. I have to make sure that I've downloaded my image, and I already have. It's right here, demo 11. So now all I have to do is just open it, and you can see that your blueprint pops up right here. It was called demo 11, so if I click on it, bam, I can quickly see all of my dimensions and go back to my part studio with just one little click. Okay. All right, so now we have our workspace units in inches. We have our blueprint uploaded to our document here. The last thing we need to do is hide the planes that we're not going to be working on. So because we're creating a bookshelf that is standing up vertically, we're actually going to be sketching on the front plane. So the right and the top planes can be hidden, and we can go ahead and view normal or view perpendicular to the front plane. All right, well, in order to create this bookshelf, the first thing that we need to do is actually create a cube that's just as big. So it's not hollowed out yet, but we're just going to create the kind of the cube, and then we'll hollow out these different parts and add in our smooth edges as we go. But to do that, we need a cube that is 40 inches tall, 36 inches wide, and then 18 inches kind of extruded out. So we'll start by making a rectangle. So sketch on the front plane. We're going to go ahead and do a center point rectangle, starting at the origin. And then right now, it doesn't really matter how big we click, because notice that this is only 5 inches by 7. That would be a very tiny bookshelf. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to zoom out, and then we're going to have to add in the dimensions. So if you remember, this bookshelf was 40 inches tall. So we'll do 40. And wow, oh my gosh, I need to zoom out even more. That's no problem. Zoom out. All right. And then if we're thinking about how wide it needed to be, it needed to be 36 inches wide. We have a 36-inch wide by 40-inch tall outline here. And then to create the cube, we need to actually extrude. So we'll use extrude. We already have that base chosen. And then the depth, remember, that was 18 inches. So we now have a cube, sharp edges, and it's definitely not hollowed out, but it's the start of our bookshelf. Okay, so we can go ahead and confirm that. The next thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and hollow out this bookshelf. So that's where the shell tool is going to come in. So we'll go ahead, click on shell. It'll ask us which face we want to remove. So we're going to start on this kind of top face here. And you'll see that it says the shell thickness is only 0.1. Well, that's not a very thick bookshelf, and that honestly won't work at all. I mean, it's paper thin, right? So to make this a reasonable bookshelf, and if we actually look at our diagram, we need to make this outside 1 inch thick all the way around. Okay, so instead of the shell thickness being 0.1 inches, we'll change that to 1, and now you see that we actually have a realistic outline or outside of that bookshelf. So I can go ahead and confirm that shell, and we are really kind of on our way. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to actually smooth off the edges using the feature fillet tool. So if you notice that this long outside edge is smooth, this kind of short one at the top is smooth, not at the bottom, this is sharp at the bottom, but at the top this is smooth. The long one going across the top here, so this edge is smooth, not on the bottom, again, just on the top. This going back is smooth, and then this outside. So when we're actually doing these or choosing the edges to fillet, we have to make sure that we only choose those specific edges. So let's go back to our Part Studio. Let's choose the Feature Fillet tool, and then let's go ahead and select those sides that we said. So we said this outside edge, this back edge going back, top edge, back edge going back, and outside edge. Now, if we notice also in the blueprint tells us that our fillet radius should be 1 inch. So when we choose the radius, it's not 0.2 inches. We want this to be 1 inch. And if we confirm that fillet, you can see that, oh, wow, that's nice. We have nice smoothed off edges. Notice on the bottom, still sharp, so this is still nice and sturdy, not going to get knocked over. But on the top, we now have these nice, smooth looking, cool edges. So then that just leaves us with adding in the bookshelves themselves. Okay, so there's a couple things that we have to do to add in the bookshelves themselves. We're going to use the rib tool, which again is right here. But before we can do that, we actually need to, kind of similar to where we were doing the loft tool, we actually have to create a second plane to tell Onshape how far we want this rib to actually go up. So we're going to be starting the rib or starting the shelf, obviously at the back of the bookshelf. So on the back of the bookshelf, you're going to right click, and then you're going to do offset plane. Okay? Now, how far do we want this offset? Well, we have to look at our diagram and we have to see how far that bookshelf goes out. So if you notice, the bookshelf goes out 16 inches. It doesn't go all the way to the end. It just goes out 16 inches. So there's probably going to be about an inch gap between where the bookshelf stops and where the outline of this bookshelf stops. And that's on purpose. That's the way it's supposed to be. So we'll make sure that when we do this offset distance, we need to make sure that it is 16 inches because that's how far we want the bookshelf to be. And then we can go ahead and confirm that plane. All right. So now that we have that plane created, we're going to go ahead and draw in our ribs or our bookshelves on plane 1. Okay, and to do that, all you have to do is just draw a straight line where it's supposed to be, and it's actually, you're going to be drawing a straight line in the middle of this shelf. So if you think, okay, the distance between the bottom of the shelf and the top of the shelf is 12 inches, and the shelf itself is 1 inch. So to get to the middle of that shelf, I have to go 12 inches plus another ½ inch. So I have to go 12.5 inches down. Okay. Same thing for this bottom one up, and then in between, we're going to end up having 13 inches in between because we have those two 1/2 inches. So let's go ahead and create that. We'll start by creating a new sketch. Make sure that we're doing it on plane 1. If you are not doing it on that new offset plane that you created, you're going to have some problems. Promise you. All right, so to do the ribs, like I said, we're going to go ahead and draw lines. We need to make sure that they're going across. So right now, we're going to add dimensions. It doesn't matter exactly where they are, but we do need to make sure that they're horizontal, okay? So make sure it's horizontal. Make sure you see that automatic constraint pop up. And make sure that it's going to a little bit over the edge here, but not all the way to here. So somewhere in the middle, is totally fine. If you go anywhere outside of that, so then press escape to get out of there. If you go anywhere outside or short here, you're going to run into problems. So you want these endpoints to just kind of be overlapping the outside edges of the bookshelf just a little bit. We'll do one more line on the bottom. Again, doesn't have to be exact because we're going to add in dimensions. What does have to be the case is that it has to be horizontal and it has to be overlapping a little bit with the outside edges. All right, so now we can actually add the dimensions, okay? So to add the dimensions, we either press D or we click on the dimension tool. Like we said, so from the bottom to the middle of the shelf, it's not 12 inches. To the top of the shelf, it's 12, but to the middle of the shelf, it's 12.5 inches, okay? And then if we want to do another one from the bottom to the bottom shelf there, again, this is going to be another 12.5 inches, okay? Now, that's the only dimensions I have to do for this one, but you're going to have to, on the homework, create multiple shelves. So you kind of think, oh, well, on the inside, it's not going to be a 12.5 distance. On the inside, it's going to be 13 because we have two halves from this middle shelf and this top shelf. So if you check the dimensions, it should be 13, and that's correct. Okay, so now we have those lines where we want our shelves to be, and we actually have, those lines are, actually, they look like they're going a little bit too far out. So let me fix that. Escape gets me out of my dimension tool. So like I said, we want these lines to just be overlapping the outside of the shelf. If they're extending too far out there, then we're going to run into issues. If they're too short, we'll also run into issues. So just make sure that before you do the actual rib command, that you have those lines nice and in the middle there. And now we'll confirm that sketch, and we're ready to actually do the rib. So to do the rib, we click on rib. The first thing that it wants is the sketch profiles. So those are the two lines that we just created. The next thing that we have to choose is the part. Well, we only have one part right now. That's this kind of shelled out bookshelf we have. So the part is just going to be part 1. And now you can see, well, this created a shell, but it created these shelves kind of closing off, not going the right direction. Basically, we want these shelves to be 90 degrees rotated from where they're at. So instead of having our shelves parallel to sketch plane, because that would mean that they're on top of each other, we want them to be perpendicular. And another word for perpendicular is normal to that sketch plane. So now when you look, okay, that's better. Now we actually have those shelves separating our different kind of areas of that shelf. Okay. Now the last thing we need to change here is the thickness. Obviously 0.1 inches is a very thin bookshelf, not what we want. We want a 1-inch thickness. If you look at the demo, each of our shelves are 1 inch thick. All right, so then I'm going to go ahead and confirm that. And if you notice, you can see that we have this little gap between our bookshelf and the end of our outline or outside of the bookshelf. That's great. This looks good. It's nice and flat on the bottom. Shelves are equally spaced. This is perfect, exactly how it should look. Okay. So you're going to be doing, again, a very similar assignment for your homework assignment, just to make sure that you're comfortable with all these extra feature tools. So good luck with this. Obviously, if you have any questions, please call me into your breakout room. But try these things first. I mean, if you run into an error right away, well, click around a little bit. See, is there something that I can do to troubleshoot it myself? And obviously, if you can't figure it out, don't take forever. Call me in, I'll help you out. But do really, try to solve some of these problems on your own first. I think that you'll find that it's a lot easier to learn when you're playing around with it. So good luck with this. We will see you next class.